Welcome to the Talk Sox podcast. I'm Alex, and I'm here with Adam and Maddie. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Holidays?
I have a small non-Red Sox related question before we really get started, and that is, when someone says the holidays, do you think they mean Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, or do you think that also includes New Year's?
We're starting off like really introspective today, and I like it.
Well, I was going to say it's nice to be back from the holidays, and then I was like, well, does New Year count as part of the holidays?
Maddie, do you have an opinion on this?
People usually say happy holidays around the 25th and then Happy New Year afterwards. So it seems like they're separate.
Okay.
I like that. I can run with that.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that works.
It's great to be back after the holidays and the new year.
I like that. Yeah, that's the thing. So since the last episode, there's been a few things that have happened. Not a ton, unfortunately. I would say probably first and foremost was the debate that we had if Walker Buehler was emergency pod territory. And I think we decided that it was not, but I think that's the perfect place to start.
Yeah, I mean, it appears to be the second major move that the Red Sox are making. And as of right now, it sort of feels like the last major move that they made. So, it's a good place to start. If it's, the best thing that the Red Sox could have done, I think that's debatable. I kind of dug into Buehler's numbers a little bit. And like last year, he had a negative 1.3 WAR, which would have been the worst WAR on the Red Sox. Just slightly worse than Isaiah Campbell's WAR. So, I mean,
how's his mustache game?
Yeah, that's for sure. So, I mean, so does it thrill me? Not really, but he ended the postseason with 10 scoreless innings. So, he ended on a high note. So
that's 100% what got him the contract. Do we all agree with that?
100%. Yeah, he pitched really well in the postseason. He has like a 3.04 ERA overall in the postseason. He's proven he's proven to pitch competently against the Yankees. This also could just be me as a Red Sox fan moving goalposts, as we've done in the past couple of off seasons. So, I mean, it's not the sexiest move they could have made, but I think their rotation should be better than last year without Pivetta.
Absolutely. Where do you think Buehler slots into the rotation? Like what spot? 1 through 5?
I feel like Houck has to be 2, just out of respect for him and a breakthrough season he had after Crochet. So maybe 3.
I think there's a pretty good argument to be made if Buehler's a 3 or a 4, and you could flip-flop Bayo back and forth between those two spots.
Yeah, I was going to say it really depends on how they think or what they think Bayo's confidence level is. Because if they think that Bayo can handle, having just signed that contract extension and, but not pitching until the 4th spot, then I think Bayo pitched at least last year like a number 3 or 4 starter. And so you probably want to give Buehler the deference of a number 3 start. But if that's going to hurt Bayo's confidence, then I don't know, maybe you put him 3rd. But they're kind of neck and neck for what I'm expecting from them this coming season.
I'd agree with that. And there was some, I forget, it was probably Section 10. I was talking that maybe part of Bayo's issue through the first part of last season was trying to live up to the contract because he did sign it fairly late in the offseason. And so a lot of pressure right there. And then he ended up getting the ball on opening day. And like that's a pretty big deal. And so there's some speculation, whether it be through the Carabas camp or whatever, that maybe that was part of his issue last year. But second half of the season, I thought Bello was arguably a number 2 on most teams. Kind of once the Miami trip happened and they gave him the extra day off, he seemed to kind of reset things right there at the beginning of July. And so I would like for Bello to be the 3, but I think right now at the beginning of the season, Buehler slots in as the 3rd starter in the rotation.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, I think Bello definitely – it seems like everybody prognosticates that, he has the stuff to be more of a top of rotation guy, and it's just
Absolutely.
the mental aspect of the game is what's been getting him. But I agree. I mean, he ended the season pretty strong, and, by the end of the season, you probably would have said he was our, second best starter. So
I would have taken him over Cutter Crawford, without a doubt.
Yeah, he had a lot less home runs than Cutter Crawford, so that was a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, my initial reaction, I kind of saw it come through, and I was actually sitting at my computer when it happened, and so I was able to kind of jump on the website and get the breaking article out and everything. But a good buddy of mine is a diehard Dodgers fan and was heartbroken that Buehler was leaving. And part of it, I think, is just some nostalgia associated with it. Because he's been a Dodgers fan for years and years and years. So to see somebody who just won a World Series title with them leave in free agency on a 1-year deal, I think bothered him. But when we really got to talking about it, he kind of said the same thing. He's like, wasn't a great season, but that postseason really showed me something that I think he had figured it back out, and that next season he's going to be incredibly dominant. And I mean, if that's the case, then the Red Sox have a steal on their hands.
And I think that, the Red Sox have had such a young rotation that, last season, I think they had signed Giolito with the intention that he would have been the kind of like veteran presence in the rotation. Instead, it ended up being Pivetta when, he was in the rotation, was like the veteran of the group. But really, I mean, basically since Eovaldi left, we haven't really had the kind of, pitcher that has like a postseason pedigree at all.
Absolutely.
And so the idea of having someone there who's been there, who knows what it takes to get there. I mean, sometimes, you hear those things and you don't know exactly how much they really matter, but the more people talk about it in the game, the more you think it has to matter at least a little bit. So, having him there, having him be, a little bit of a leader, hopefully it'll turn out well.
I have cautious optimism, I would say. I mean, like Maddie said, our starting rotation is the floor of our starting rotation now is way higher than it was going into 2024. But I think that the floor also has the potential to completely fall out from underneath us, because there just are so many injury what ifs with this starting rotation now. I mean, you've got Crochet that's never started a full season. Like, yes, technically he did last year, but he was throwing 4 innings after the All-Star break. Yeah. Giolito coming off Tommy John, Buehler coming off Tommy John, Liam Hendricks coming off effectively 2 burn seasons due to his cancer diagnosis and Tommy John. Garrett Whitlock coming off Tommy John. You've just got so many question marks on these elbows in the system that if everything works out great, I think that the Red Sox, as they stand right now, have the potential to be a top 5 rotation in all of Major League Baseball. But God forbid something happen, and suddenly what seems like a pretty big strength is gone.
I think that, like, you don't really have to look that much farther than Walker Buehler's old team to think that, there is, some leeway there, because, despite their starting rotation issues last year, I mean, obviously the Dodgers made it to the World Series, won the World Series, with Walker Buehler essentially being their best healthy pitcher by the end of the season. Yeah. So I mean, like, but the thing about the Red Sox is you do have those question marks in the rotation, but you also have people like Richard Fitz and Cooper Criswell, guys who probably aren't even going to start the year on the major league roster, but they are going to be helpful depth pieces to have in Worcester, should someone go down. And
absolutely.
I was actually sort of impressed with Cooper Criswell this past season. I know that coming out of camp, they kind of said like, oh, might he get the 5th starter spot? And then when he went down, I kind of thought like, yeah, I don't really see that happening. But he ended up coming up, pitching pretty well, and being a real contributor to the team. So
I thought he handled being shuttled back and forth between AAA and the major league roster really, really well, because there are some guys that do not deal with that very well at all. And he was like the pro's pro from everything that we've seen about it. He didn't complain. He took the ball. He pitched. He understood when AC came to pull him, why he was getting pulled, whatever the case may be. And I think that exactly like you said, Adam, I actually have a roster projection coming out, I think on the site on Wednesday. So tomorrow. And I don't have Richard Fitz or Cooper Criswell as part of the major league roster breaking camp. But we will definitely see them probably before the end of April is up, just to try to get some extra rest in for some of these arms that still need to rehab a little bit and get used to working a full major league season again.
Yeah, I know that there's been some rumors. I think MLB Trade Rumors wrote it up recently, the idea of the Red Sox using a 6-man rotation.
Breslow's commented on it recently now too, and says that it's an option. Do you buy it?
Do you have any thoughts, Maddie, on that?
At least for April, I saw somewhere maybe on Twitter that they don't have that many rest days at the beginning of the season. So at least for the first month, and then we'll see with a little more rest in between series.
It feels like one of those things, at least to me, that like you can say you want to have a 6-man rotation, and honestly, I don't think it's a bad idea, but just like last year when we thought we had plenty of starting pitchers coming into the year, and then injuries sort of hit. It's sort of like best laid plans. If we make it through spring training with 6 healthy starters, then I would say, yeah, go for it. But I don't know if you really want to start the season having to rely on, Fitz or Criswell as like, firm starting pitcher, starting rotation, piece. They should be more held off as depth. So I think if in the end you can, you have 5 healthy starters, then I think that's probably what they're going to end up having to stick with.
I think so. And Giolito's even come out and said that he much prefers the standard 4 days rest. That's where he feels that he performs the best at. And so to have a pitcher who's been signed to the team for now a full season, but has not thrown a pitch of meaningful baseball for the Red Sox to come out and be like, hey, I don't want to have a 6-man rotation, I think speaks pretty loudly too. And I think that Bailey and Cora will probably listen to that instead of whatever the front office is currently saying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. But also, I wonder, like, when was the last time he was in a 6-man rotation?
That's a good point.
Ever? I mean, I guess
college.
I know in college he probably pitched, every 6 or 7 days, but he definitely hasn't been since then that he's ever had that many days rest in between starts. So
right, except for this past season, that's the longest he's had.
a lot of rest. Fresh arm.
Kind of speaking of the Tommy John inflection in the Red Sox, we also signed Patrick Sandoval, who, according to Craig Breslow, is expected to contribute at some point this year. I would assume that's post-All-Star break, maybe even post-trade deadline. But what were your guys' reactions about that signing? Because that one flew under the radar a little bit and gave people nightmares when they saw Red Sox sign Sandoval again.
I was going to say, I'm going to have trouble not accidentally calling him Pablo, so I'm just...
It's going to happen. It's fine.
But I mean, I think it flies under the radar because it feels a lot like signing Liam Hendriks last offseason, where it's sort of like a person whose name Red Sox fans probably have heard before, but knowing that, we probably haven't seen that much of him previously, and we're not going to see him, in spring training or in the first few months of the season. I think that no one really wants to get their hopes up because, even if last year you thought that Hendriks could come back by the end of the season and be like a meaningful bullpen piece down the end, we saw that didn't end up happening. And so I think there's a kind of steeling yourself for disappointment with signing Sandoval.
Maddie,
what was your take on it?
I did a little research about Patrick Sandoval, and during his best season, he's been a pretty good pitcher. Since 2022, he's had the lowest home run rate fifth lowest home run rate amongst starting pitchers. So there's a plus. He's no Cutter Crawford in that regard, but it's just betting on his health is an issue for the team. But he's only making $13 million in 2026, which is significantly below the average AAV for starting pitchers. So if he does come back, it could be a steal, but you're betting on a pitcher being healthy and returning to full form after a big surgery.
I kind of viewed it. Go ahead, Adam.
I looked at his numbers from last year, pre-injury, and I mean, 5.08 ERA doesn't look great, but he did have a 3.87 FIP. So his underlying numbers, say that there's something there. And I mean,
I think the ERA can kind of be explained away with he was obviously feeling whatever was going on in his elbow.
And he was also playing for the Angels.
Right. That's also a fate worse than death for some people.
So, I mean, so I think, with fingers crossed, a better fielding team behind him, I think he could be a solid contributor if he gets back.
I think part of the reason they brought him on is hoping that he can come back around All-Star break trade deadline. And in the event that something happens to the top of the rotation, Crochet, Houck, Bayo, I won't loop Buehler into that, but if one of them goes down, especially Crochet, since Sandoval is also left-handed, it still gives you a left-handed option to start, hopefully, the second half of the season. And I'm by no means comparing Garrett Crochet and Patrick Sandoval, but I think that was part of the thought process as well. Is okay, well, let's say one of these top three do go down, Sandoval can come back. Is he going to be that quality? More than likely, no. But he at least can eat innings. He can pitch in a major league situation, and it saves them having to bring in, any number of names that have been brought in the last couple of seasons to kind of backfill the rotation throughout, the end of August, September.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about, who the Red Sox have brought in the past couple of seasons, but, I always feel like when there's guys coming back from injury like this that the Red Sox sign, there's always that.
It's just like trading for a left-handed starter.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like making a big trade, and then you're just kind of like, but it's not making a big trade. And
it was the years of just wait until Chris Sale comes back at the All-Star break.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We've heard it so many times before that it's sort of like, I think it should be like a big bonus if we get something out of him this season, not like second half or after the trade deadline. Like this guy's going to be in the rotation,
Right. Who are currently the kind of starting six that we have? Crochet, Houck, Bayo, Buehler, Giolito, and Cutter. Do you see likely moving to the bullpen to make way for a 5-man rotation?
If you have an idea, Maddie, you can go ahead because I have to think about it for a second here.
Off the top of my head, Crawford, he's just been out of that group. Well, yeah, that group, the most inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is sort of what I lean towards too. But the more that I've heard, pundits talk about Cutter Crawford, the more that I think like maybe I'm getting too hung up on the like home run thing, and that what everyone else seems to be really valuing from him is that he really was our most reliable pitcher in the sense of he took the ball every 5 days for most of the season. At least in the first half of the season, he pitched pretty well. So it makes me feel like he is higher valued in the organization than like I think Red Sox fans might even value him at this point. That said, I feel the same way. Like, who of the other 5 guys would you take out? Like,
it's an insult to Giolito to have him go pitch in the bullpen.
Yeah, and I mean, and Houck was clearly our best pitcher last year. So
I think there's an incredible argument to be made that Tanner Houck could be the best closer in baseball if he wanted to be. And I think that we saw glimpses of that 2 years ago, but he definitely would prefer to start.
Yeah. And you did mention Garrett Whitlock, before as a guy coming back from injury, but he was another one of those guys where, he was a great bullpen piece. Then we moved him to the starting rotation, but he's definitely a guy who seems like he's going to be a bullpen piece again when he comes back from this injury. So, might he be the one who ends up getting, save opportunities later in the season? I think probably, honestly, if he's healthy.
I think that I wrote about this early in the offseason, maybe even at the end of the season, kind of just looking at the internal candidates for closer. And I think that Whitlock has a better chance than Justin Slayton to be the closer by the end of the season. And I love Slayton. I think Slayton could be a very effective major league closer this year. But if Whitlock can return to his 2020, 2021 form, I don't know if there is a better closer option in the system right now than Garrett Whitlock. The one knock against him is Slayton and Chapman and Hendricks are all strikeout pitchers, whereas Whitlock pitches to contact. And if you're not going to shore up the infield defense in some way, I don't know if you want a contact pitcher closing out games, especially when it counts.
Yeah, I think Slayton is, of those guys, if you were going to ask me who is closing by the end of the season, I think Slayton or Whitlock are the two that stand out to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Possibilities. As I've mentioned before, I am here in Dallas, so I have seen the Chapman train up close, and he just hasn't lasted in closing roles the past, 3 or 4 seasons. So, the idea that he is a closing option for a contending team just doesn't shake out.
No.
And so, I mean, Hendricks, if he comes back and he's as good as he was, in 2020, 2021, then, he'll probably start the year as the closer, I would think, if he's healthy.
That was my roster prediction, is that game 1, probably through May, Liam Hendricks is the closer for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
But
I think it depends because, the other thing about Whitlock is, his first season up, they were really into the multiple innings save from Whitlock. Mm-hmm. And then not using him like the next game or maybe even for 2 games. And so that might end up being a possibility. I know that's not like something that Alex Cora loves to do. I think
the closer by committee almost.
Yeah, but more like a closer rotation. Like, like Whitlock
situational.
Yeah, like Whitlock, might lock down a 2 inning save or something, and then Hendricks does the next day's save because Whitlock's unavailable. Like I could see something like that happening too.
It wouldn't shock me. Ideally, the Red Sox sign Tanner Scott or somebody in that vein, because Scott's still out there, Hoffman is still out there. Even Kirby Yates, which I don't know if Kirby Yates could be an effective closer, but you've got two big name guys who have closed recently and been all-star caliber successful closers. I think the one kind of knock against Tanner Scott is he's left-handed, which would add a third left-handed arm into the bullpen. And so if Chapman is your 8th inning setup guy, do you want to go left hand 8th inning, left hand 9th inning? Or do you kind of slot Slayton into that 8th inning role, Chapman into the 7th inning role, which I think he might be more impactful there because there's way less pressure on him.
Yeah.
And he can sling it 103, 104. And if he walks a couple guys, that's fine versus the 8th or 9th inning. But I would love to see the Red Sox make one more addition to the bullpen. And I think that they should be playing in the Scott and Hoffman end of the pool in that situation.
So one of the things I was going to bring up here eventually is that Chris Cotillo wrote kind of his 25 predictions for 2025 post.
That was an enjoyable listen for the Fenway Rundown. It's a free plug for Cotillo and McAdam right there.
Yeah, so I at least kept the predictions here on screen for myself so I could, refer to a couple of them. But one of them was that Breslow makes a big bullpen splash. But and Tanner Scott gets mentioned, Jeff Hoffman gets mentioned. Also, AJ.
Didn't he say on the podcast that he thought it might be a trade? No, that was for catcher.
Yeah, for catcher. So
yes,
so
that's
for
what
these,
it was.
It's
he mentioned AJ Minter in that conversation.
Yeah, AJ Minter and David Robertson, both of whom.
Oh, come on, Cotillo.
I don't know if I'd call those guys splashes exactly, but I could see someone in that range. I just don't know if the type of contract that the real Tanner Scott, the real upper echelon guys are going to command. I don't know if ownership has that kind of has a stomach for that. Multiple years to a reliever, paying couple 10, 15 mil a year. I don't think that's gonna be for them.
I kind of agree with you. Go for it, Maddie.
The thing about Jeff Hoffman that's kind of interesting is that he reportedly wanted to test being a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if they'd sign him, would it be contingent on him having a shot at the rotation?
I think it'd almost have to be a conversation we'll entertain this in 2026, but for 2025, you're coming here to close games. And then whether that happens in 2026 and beyond is up to the team. But if his ultimate, which I guess most relievers' ultimate goal at one point or another is to be a starter. They were probably the best starter on their high school and college team. And now they're relievers, which to some people sucks. But if that's his goal, I don't know if the Red Sox are going to be a fit because we just talked about, we're pretty deep when it comes to the starter rotation at this point, especially when you consider how many options some of these guys still have left. And if he wants to start, that's great, but he could be far more impactful as a shutdown closer than hoping that he can find some kind of rhythm and stick in a 5 or 6 man rotation when he hasn't started in years at this point.
I could see Breslow though liking that idea, being able to sell it to ownership as, you have to sign, probably the second best reliever currently as the free agent market. You can sign him to a multi-year deal, but by year 2 or 3, he might be in the starting rotation, kind of thing. I could see that being a good selling point to be like, so don't think of it as signing a reliever to, a 3-year deal. Think of it as signing a reliever for 1 year and then potentially a starting pitcher for 2 years. So then that way, if Buehler does move on after his one signed season, you have someone there who's willing to compete for the job and can at least, contribute in some way.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I hadn't considered that. I think go for it.
But I think that they are probably much closer to signing the lower end of that, the kind of
the tier 2,
AJ Minter, Kirby Yates.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate Kirby Yates.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen Kirby Yates up close, and it's not, he's not like,
he's not gonna blow you away.
Yeah, he's not like the prime of his career anymore, but he is probably a lot like Kenley Jansen has been the past 2 years. He's still like a serviceable closer.
Yeah.
So, if in a situation where he has to, actually like battle for the job of closer, he might step his game up. Who knows?
I think the other side of this conversation comes through the trade market, specifically with the Cotillo report coming out. Was it last night that Nolan Arenado has told the Cardinals that he would waive his no trade to come to Boston? And that's so far the only team that publicly has been confirmed that, yes, if a deal is on the table, I will go there. I think that Ryan Helsley is an incredibly intriguing part of that deal. It came out earlier today that the Cardinals are, quote, not chopping him. Yeah. I don't buy that for a minute. He's on an expiring deal and just pitched the best season of his career for a team that was dog water. So if you can package Nolan Arenado and Ryan Helsley together to get both of them to Boston with somehow sending Masataka Yoshida to St. Louis, because that's the only way this works, in my opinion. I think that that's a trade that you have to do, and you immediately have an all-star caliber closer who would probably be very interested in signing an extension in Boston. And you have a player, Nolan Arenado, who's a 10-time Gold Glove winner at third base. And it should be coming out tomorrow, an article about why the Sox should trade for Nolan Arenado to go up against why they should not sign Alex Bregman article from last week. I think that and we'll talk about my 180 on this. That's fine. We can do that. That's good. Not a big deal.
Get my question.
But I think that if you're going to trade for Nolan Arenado, which seems to be at least a conversation at this point, a pretty serious conversation, that you need to try to find a way to include Helsley in that deal. And if that means giving up Wilyer Abreyu to bring him in because that logjam is already pretty compacted, and you've got Roman Anthony that I anticipate will be on the roster by the end of May, just further making that situation jammier. So if you need to send in Abreyu and pay down a large portion of Yoshida's contract and attach a top 10 to 18 ranked prospect in the system to get that trade done, I think that that's a trade that I almost said Chaim Bloom, but he now works for the Cardinals, that Craig Breslow should do today if it's on the table. As long as Triston Casas is not involved in that trade.
Okay, so I'll go back to the Chris Cotillo article here, because one of the things that he also predicted was that Masataka Yoshida is not a member of the Red Sox when the camp breaks at the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
which
McAdam pushed back on. He said he'd be gone at the trade deadline. He thinks that he breaks camp with the Red Sox.
It just, I don't see it. Like, after all that came out about the the talks with the Mariners about trying to package Casas and Yoshida to get, was it Castillo?
Yeah,
Castillo was right?
How stupid is Dipoto for that? My goodness.
Well, I think what it really shows is how little value Yoshida has in the trade market. It's like,
didn't the Red Sox want them to take on the majority of the contract though?
Yeah. And I sort of wonder if that's going to be, if that's something from ownership that they're going to say, like, we can trade him, but we don't want to also be paying, the majority.
I think in a bad contract swap, which is what Arenado is now for the Cardinals, he is a kind of a whale of a contract for them, with them trying to retool. I think that it's at least easier to stomach, because $5 million, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but $5 million of that contract every year is being paid by the Colorado Rockies. And I think the Cardinals would take on a little bit of the contract if Wilyer Abreyu and another prospect were headed back to St. Louis. So it would kind of even out a little bit where, yeah, we're going to take on X amount of dollars of Masataka's. I forget how much he has left over the next, 3 seasons, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Arenado's 3 seasons. It's almost like a wash at that point. Arenado is owed more than Masataka Yoshida is. And I think that if both teams are willing to pay a little bit of money, I think that a deal is probably there.
I mean, that's if you're doing just a straight, like, bad contract for bad contract swap. I just wonder about, about the Helsley versus.
I think the Helsley thing is where you have to bring in Wilyer Abreyu and someone else.
I just wonder how good that the someone else will have to be in that case.
I think that you could. I think that Blaze Jordan would make sense in that deal. He's blocked at the major league level at both of his positions. Whether Devers stays on third for the next 4 years or whatever, or first base, which is Triston Casas, until they actually trade him, sign him to an extension, or he hits free agency. Blaze Jordan makes a lot of sense. Old friend of the show, David Sandlin, could be involved in that. Mikey Romero, I think, is a name that could get that deal done tonight.
I mean, that I would be surprised. I think that a lot of teams, I think you saw it with the Mariners. I think a lot of teams are going to be really squeezing the Red Sox to try to get, one of the other big, I guess we're now down to big 2, but there's like, one of the, couple of big prospects.
Marcelo, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what everyone is hoping for now, because, the Red Sox have sort of made it clear that they are going for it a little bit more. And it certainly seems like free agency isn't going to be the way that they're adding major pieces. So it's sort of squeeze them to see what they're willing to part with. And, having already seen them part with Teal, it's kind of like, okay, well, you need this piece so that, you're actually capitalizing on the years that you have Crochet currently signed for. It's like, so which one of the other top prospects that you have can we get away from you, kind of thing. So, would I mind it if it was, Sandlin or something? No, that's fine. You can make that trade. But I think in my mind, it's probably going to be something more like maybe Abreu, maybe Cutter Crawford, and maybe another prospect, like maybe then you would get like a Sandlin. But I think it's going to take like a couple of young, controllable pieces to get that done. And, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that.
Do you think that if it is, because I think Cutter Crawford is very tradable at this point. In a mock deal that I made at the beginning of the offseason, I had him as part of the Garrett Crochet trade package. Mm-hmm. And I think that had more teams not come to the table on that, I think Crawford probably would have been a pretty central piece to that, along with Wilyer or Teal. But if that's the case, so let's say they do bring in Arenado through a trade with Cutter, Wilyer, whatever. Mm-hmm. How close do you think we are to seeing a Masataka Yoshida DFA? Because I think that is a very real possibility this season.
Maddie,
it's a lot of money to eat, but he is literally the logjam in the lineup. If Masataka Yoshida was not rostered on the Boston Red Sox right now, these conversations are drastically different.
I mean, it's like that would be a big pill to swallow.
Without a doubt, absolutely.
Even if he has a bounce back year, I think there's still some value to keeping him on the team and then trying to move him at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some speculation if he would. I think the prevailing thought from just people I've kind of kept tabs on and people who are talking like in that direction is the belief within the majors is that he would clear waivers if he was DFA'd. Like, I don't think that there is a team that is willing to take him on because of the shoulder surgery, which is nuts.
I mean, but what are we going to, is like another Rusney Castillo situation where he's going to be, the most expensive man in Worcester,
Yeah.
And we're just never going to be able to roster him again because he'll count against our competitive balance tax. So he just like rots down there. Like, I mean, I guess that's a possibility because we've seen this organization do it before, but
now Masataka Yoshida is infinitely
he's just
more impactful than Rusney Castillo.
Yeah, he's so much better than Rusney Castillo that like I don't think we want to do that to him. So I think that there's like you're either gonna have to pay his salary down for some sort of trade, or you're gonna have to live with him at DH. I don't think we have the pieces right now to move Devers to a full-time DH. And I don't think Devers wants to be a full-time DH yet. So I think, you have to humor him at playing third. So I don't really see the harm in it keeping Yoshida at DH, at least part-time for, until the trade deadline.
Do you think the Red Sox operate with a platoon DH more this season? Because you do have a couple of guys who can play third that can spell Rafi. Because, I mean, there's no platoon advantage for any pitcher against Rafael Devers. He hits lefties and righties just the same. So it's not like you're playing that matchup. But do you think that we see Devers DH more against left-handed pitching since the front office and Cora has effectively told us that Masataka Yoshida is not going to see any left-handed pitching this year because he didn't last year for the most part? And then you get a Romy Gonzalez, Vaughn Grissom, some kind of combination of those two plus whoever else in the system can play third, playing third on those days. And is that any more beneficial than keeping Devers on third and hitting and letting Masataka Yoshida hit against left-handed pitching? Because to me, that's the best move forward with what we currently have. Even if he's not great against lefties, let him hit them anyway, because he's going to have to learn. Like, it's his third season in the league. If you don't trust him at this point to hit left-handed hitting, and you could say the same thing about Wilyer Abreyu, like, let him hit lefties. If he is on this roster on opening day playing right field, let him play every day, no matter who is on the mound, and let him figure out how to hit lefties. If Yoshida can hit lefties this year, he is an easy trade at the trade deadline. You'll have teams that will line up to take him.
I mean, I think that could be definitely one tactic they take, but I think that also what might end up determining the DH mix is going to be just like who's pitching on a particular day. I think that there's a decent chance that if it's more of a ground ball guy kind of thing, you might see Devers end up DHing in some of those situations too, just to keep him out of the line of fire as much as possible. I think that a lot of the stuff that have been coming out of the Red Sox camp, it really seems like they're more down on his defense than I think that we've been led to believe, in the last couple of years, where it's always kind of seemed like people are like, wow, what a great defensive play there by Rafi. And you're kind of like, yeah, okay. He makes some occasionally, but.
And they can't come out and say that because they don't have somebody to take his place at third base. I actually think that Devers would be fine shifting to DH. In spring training, it was either last year or the year before, he said they paid me a lot of money to hit home runs, which is very Manny Ramirez of him. And I think that if Devers could solely focus on hitting, because there have been teammates who have said, if he makes an error, it impacts his offense. He's going to be down for the next couple of at-bats. He's not going to play up to his standard. I think that if you could kind of explain that to him, like, hey, like, here's what we noticed. Here's what you're seeing. So we want you just to solely focus on hitting. And you are effectively the heir apparent to David Ortiz at this point. I think that Devers would run with that. And there's no internal option to replace him at third right now. I think that a case could be made for Vaughn Grissom if you wanted to keep him in the lineup. He has played third in the past, and I think that he is athletic enough to handle that corner. But you definitely want to see more offensive power, kind of like what we saw at the end of the season. If he could keep that going, I think that there's a better case to be made there. But I think that if you're legitimately looking at moving Devers to a DH role, you have to bring in somebody like Alex Bregman or Nolan Arenado who shores up that defense, and you have to find a way to get Masataka Yoshida off this team. And I don't think you're going to see both of those things happen before the season starts.
So explain to us your 180 on Arenado. Like what
it's okay. So it's more so
to it than like you think like if we eat that we can get Helsley, or is there actually like
no, that's part of it, but it started 3 weeks ago. When my best friend lives here in the same town I do, we're both diehard Sox fans. We were just kind of talking, and Bregman naturally came up. Like, hey, like, he's a perfect fit for Boston, yada, yada, yada. Which on paper is true. Like, that swing is tailor-made to play at Fenway. However, he's 33, 32.
Bregman?
Early 30s, 31 maybe. Arenado's 33. And he wants a 7-year deal. That does nothing but hamstring the Red Sox for the next 7 years, no matter where he plays, no matter what he does. Arenado, yeah, the offensive firepower is down, but if those are our two options, he's on the team for 3 seasons versus 7. And I would much rather take a flyer on Arenado, who, in my opinion, is a better defender than Alex Bregman. And if you put his 24 spray chart over Fenway, his homers almost double. Like, suddenly, like, his average this year was kind of on par with where he's been for the past 4 seasons. His slug was the only thing that's down. And Busch Stadium is a notorious pitcher's park. It is deep. It is wide. It plays very, very friendly to the pitching side of baseball. And Arenado has put up tremendous offensive numbers in a stadium like that. So when you look at it with that in mind, it doesn't really come as a surprise that his offensive firepower and numbers have dropped the past 2 seasons because he is getting older. But if you put him in a stadium like Busch, where a pull happy swing is going to pepper the monster with doubles, and then he's still got quite a bit of loft in his swing. He's going to put up some pretty good slug numbers if he's in Boston.
Just to clarify, Bregman is going to be 31 in March.
31. Okay.
So he's a little bit younger than you thought, but
yeah,
I still think, 7-year deal. And considering that his numbers were down.
He's trending down too.
Yeah.
And I would rather be tied to a 3-year deal than a 7-year deal on an aging player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get a season into the Bregman deal and everybody's looking at the Red Sox the way everybody's currently looking at the Padres and Xander.
Yeah.
Like that arguably, and maybe not even arguably at this point, will probably go down as the worst contract in baseball.
It could be another Javier Baez contract for the team.
Thank you. I was just thinking, I was like, no, there's another one. Which one is it? It's the Javier Baez.
Yeah. During the season on Underdog, anytime there was an under for a half hit on Baez, I took it every single time, and it paid out 90% of the time. It was great.
Yeah, like just a insane decline.
Over 1.5 strikeouts? Sure.
But I mean, yeah, I guess so. But
if those are the two options you're faced with, there are other options that fix the team. But if it's either Bregman or Arenado, give me Arenado.
Right. Okay.
So it's not so much a 180 on Arenado. Like I still think the firepower is down. He's not going to be like an all-star contributing player while he's in Boston. But I would much rather have him on a 3-year deal than Bregman on a 7-year deal for less than half the cost at this point, too.
Yeah.
Now, if we could trade Triston Casas for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., this solves all of our problems.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, we've been talking about the right-handed batter options, and there was so much talk about Teoscar Hernandez, and obviously that one slipped.
Did you ever believe that would happen? As soon as it was like the Red Sox and Teoscar are linked together. No, they're not. He's going back to LA. And if they had no interest in him last year, there's no way they had interest in him this year at a year older.
And just like with so many outfield options at this point in the Red Sox system, it seemed ridiculous, but it was like Red Sox beat writers just like their like wet dream was to have Teoscar for some reason. And it's just like, if we do need a right-handed bat, it doesn't feel like that's going to be an outfield thing, but are there any right-handed options that you see as a fit at this point, or does it have to be Bregman or Arenado as in like a trade kind of thing?
There's still some out there. I think the name that's been most connected through kind of Twitter personalities and podcast personalities is Randall Grichuk. Kind of we're going to sign him and you're going to like it kind of deal, very much in the Hunter Renfroe, Duvall vein of signings. He mashes lefties, man.
Did I end up loving Hunter Renfroe and Adam Duvall? Yes, I did.
Absolutely. So. When Duvall broke his wrist, I texted my best friend and said, the season's over.
Yeah. Crushing.
Like, he was the heart and soul of that team through the first week and a half of the season. But he's about the only name left on the free agent market that I think makes sense. Personally, and Adam, you wrote about this, I would love to see JD Martinez come back to Boston. I don't think that he offers a ton of upside, but maybe coming back to Boston, maybe there'll be something there. You've got that short wall, that short distance to the monster.
I mean, it's just.
I love JD. I love JD so much.
I love JD too. Maybe he'll be coming back to Boston as a hitting coach, but I just don't like. He doesn't have anything
in the tank.
There's no position for him to play. It's funny how both like JD and Justin Turner, both currently free agents, and both are kind of had that exact same DH / hitting coach kind of like vibe about them, and how we just didn't really continue that at all. Both left is kind of like a void that's there now. But
in 18, literally, when you ask anybody, like, how'd your swing get so much better this season? JD Martinez. And then he left, and everybody's like, I don't know what they were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, I mean, Grichuk, we have the exact same issue as with Teoscar, except he's not as good. Like he's, he's an outfielder. He's 33 years old. I haven't thought about Randall Grichuk much since he left Toronto. So it's sort of just like, oh, he's still just playing.
I actually didn't know he was still in the league.
Yeah, exactly. I had to look it up, and he played for Arizona, I guess, last year.
Okay.
Like, I mean,
good for him.
Good for him, but
he could have stayed and played with Corbin Burns. That's on him.
So I don't know.
But I think the more interesting part to that conversation is Breslow's comments. Was it last week when he said that the right-handed bat could be an internal option, which to me either means he's talking about Trevor Story, which is terrifying, or there is a legitimate belief in the Red Sox camp that Christian Campbell is going to break camp with the big league roster, and he is going to be that right-handed jolt of energy that the Red Sox need. And the more and more we get, or the deeper we get into the offseason, the closer we get to spring training, however you want to look at it, I really think that that's a legitimate option. I think that Campbell will enter spring training in an automatic competition with Vaughn Grissom for second base, and I don't think Campbell loses.
All right, so you ready to go back to the Chris Cotillo prediction piece?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is what he has on this. So the first one was that Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell will both start the year at AAA. But then the next prediction, which is more just like adding on to that prediction, Christian Campbell debuts in early May with Roman Anthony a couple weeks behind him. Marcelo Myers gets promoted in the second half. So that was his prediction. So, I mean, he's not saying they break camp, but, coming up pretty early. So
the incentive is for at least one of them to break camp, though, isn't it? Because if they win Rookie of the Year, there's draft pick compensation attached to it.
Yeah, when he said that, when he wrote that, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, it doesn't make sense to bring them up that early.
I think you have one break camp, not both.
And so you think it's Campbell?
I think that, just the outfield is kind of so set as it is right now. Is Roman Anthony a better baseball player than Wilyer Abreyu? Probably. Coming into the beginning of a major league season, would I rather have Wilyer Abreyu on my starting lineup? Yes, but just because Anthony hasn't seen major league pitching yet. And even, in spring training, he's going to get glimpses of it, depending on how long he stays with the big league club until he gets reassigned to minor league camp or whatever. But I think that I would rather at least have Wilyer as an option there to start the first couple weeks, month and a half of the season, and then bring up Roman once he's proven to everybody that AAA is no longer any sort of challenge for him. Campbell, I think, makes too much sense to break camp with the big league club. Vaughn Grissom showed positive strides at the end of the season, but I think it was Chipper Jones when the Chris Sale trade happened. Chipper was like, oh, he's a great kid, sucks as a defender, but he's a great kid. And that's Chipper. If you've ever watched anything Chipper's done, Chipper's a very tell it exactly how it is in his mind kind of deal. But I think that Grissom's kind of proven that with his limited time with the club too. There was never a ball that was hit to second last year when Grissom was healthy. And I was like, oh, no problem. I was always like, maybe I'd rather have Trevor Story at second base. So I think that Campbell, who spent the bulk of this past season playing second over Grissom at points in AAA until Grissom got called up and then Campbell got hurt. I think that once spring training hits, we will be looking at Christian Campbell lighting the Red Sox on fire. I think it was Coley on Section 10 said that, like, privately he's talked to people within the Red Sox organization and was like, hey, like, Christian Campbell's the number one prospect in my opinion. And they were like, yeah, in ours too. Like, as an organization, Campbell is our number one prospect. We just can't say that. And so I think that for people within the organization, and Coley is far more connected than any of us probably will ever be, but for them to be comfortable enough with Christian Campbell to tell him that, and for him to then kind of get their approval, and he didn't name names, but to turn around and say it on the biggest Red Sox podcast in the world, man, like it's a lot of pressure for the kid, but he seems poised to be kind of the next homegrown star in Boston. And if Roman Anthony lives up to the hype and Marcelo Meyer lives up to the hype, that is an influx of youth that sets us up for years.
I think one of the things that also got brought up by Cotillo is this idea of what if Rafaela is untouchable as far as getting sent down to AAA. Because I think
it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, because that's another, like, I think that he'll break camp at a major league in the majors, but he's another guy who, he has the option. So maybe if he doesn't do so well in preseason, do we see, one of the young guys end up getting his spot? I don't know. I think it could happen.
I think you almost have to keep him on the roster for his defense alone. You have arguably a platinum glove caliber center fielder in Ceddanne Rafaela, and you don't have that anywhere else. And he's a passable shortstop. I think that if they told him, like, hey, you're going to be the shortstop of the future, I think he would be a Gold Glove shortstop. I think that his natural athletic ability is on the defensive side of the ball. But I think one thing that's kind of been overblown with Rafaela is his rookie numbers. If you look at JBJ's, who's going to be the easiest comparison to make between the two, Rafaela's rookie season was better than JBJ's. And look at how long JBJ lasted. And if you're telling me that Rafaela's floor is JBJ in his okay seasons, I'll take it every year because of the defensive ability.
Yeah, I mean, JBJ was...
I love JBJ.
Yeah, he was easily, like, one of my favorite Red Sox players.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I loved watching him. I still saved a bunch of, like, Instagram reels of him making, like, amazing catches. I just go back and sadly watch them every once in a while just to remind myself. But,
the triple Bs were all about.
Yeah, exactly. So I largely agree with that, but I think that, JBJ didn't have a lot of young guys pushing him,
That's very true. JBJ was on a team of veterans.
Yeah. So, it was like once Betts was up, once Benintendi was up, once JBJ was up, it was like there was no real, like, fourth outfielder was never a rookie. It was like
right
signing like a veteran like Chris Young or something to, be that kind of guy. So I think that's where the difference is that you have younger guys who at least we all believe can probably play in the majors too. So that's where it kind of gets a little bit hairy for him at least. But
I don't think that Rafaela is untradeable at this point either. I think that it's tough to trade him at the year after you give him the extension. But I think that if push came to shove, because as much as I beat the drum for trading Jarren Duran, I don't think they should actually do it. If you have to strike while the iron's hot and you get a front of the line starter that slots in front of Crochet, Jarren Duran is gone. But realistically, Jarren Duran is here. And if you have to make a trade out of the outfield, Wilyer Abreyu makes the most sense. But if a team sees something in Ceddanne Rafaela, I think that the Red Sox would be foolish to at least not entertain that. In some, like, I mean, I think that it needs to be a pretty big overpay from whoever is trading for him, but I don't think he's untouchable.
Yeah, I agree. I think that my original thought was when they signed into the extension that kind of meant that he would be here for that entire extension. But the more that I've looked at the extension itself, it's not like it was a huge overpay or anything. It's actually like a pretty reasonable deal, so that even though, we talk about like young controllable assets, meaning, underpaid, still have years of arbitration left, it wasn't like a huge deal that can't be moved. So I think that there is still a chance, but I agree with you. I think that they really like his defense. And
I think if he has a breakout offensive season this year, there will be teams calling the Red Sox all the time to trade for Ceddanne Rafaela. And they won't do it, obviously. But, well, hopefully. But if the offensive side of the ball comes around, then he'll be probably the most in-demand trade chip over a Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell that they've had since Mookie.
I don't know why I had to bring that up, but okay. Yeah, and actually, I don't know you guys, I think you guys did see, but did you see that Chris Martin officially signed?
Oh, yeah.
So that
I thought there was a legitimate chance he was coming back to Boston, but I also understand why he made the decision he made.
I mean, I did literally, that article just got published where I concluded it by saying that that's like the one guy that the Red Sox should actually bring back, and he has officially signed somewhere else. So
now it's time for Joe Kelly.
I mean,
I would welcome it with open arms. This team needs somebody who is just like, you know what? I'm going to hit you with both the ball and my fist. Like,
there's
Cotillo predicted a massive brawl this year too in his 25 prediction.
That's true.
With the Red Sox, and it's not going to happen if Joe Kelly's not on this team.
Who better do you want to go into a brawl with?
Joe Kelly Fight Club.
I think it would be really interesting to have him in the, in the Bailey Breslow pitching camp.
Did I dream that him and Hendricks didn't get along in Chicago?
I don't know.
Heard that somewhere.
It's so funny because when I was writing that up about Joe Kelly, I actually was going to say, like, it almost like has to be either the Red Sox or the Dodgers that signed him. Like, where else would he even go? And then I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot that he pitched for the White Sox did he pitch 2 seasons or just 1? I forget exactly what it was, but
I don't remember off the top of my head.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if they didn't get along since I completely wiped it from my memory that he even played with them.
And I can't even tell you, I probably saw it on Twitter somewhere, so it's probably not actually true. But I want to say when this debate came up last offseason with Kelly, because he was a free agent last year too, that was part of the conversation was, well, he and Liam Hendricks didn't get along because their personalities are so different or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're 2 grown men, and if the Red Sox see a need to bring in Joe Kelly, I think Liam Hendricks would probably be fine with it. Unless, like, they fought and, like, physically, and we don't know about it.
I would pay to watch that fight, honestly.
I think Liam Hendricks would win.
I think so too.
Like, Joe's crazy, but Liam's Australian.
Yeah. You have any Joe Kelly thoughts, Maddie?
At least Joe Kelly isn't married to Liam Hendricks' ex, like Giancarlo Stanton and Cody Bellinger.
Yeah,
so,
that's got to be fun dynamics in the Yankees clubhouse.
When I heard about that, I feel like that was like never talked about before that trade happened, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and this is a thing. I was like, what?
It's a terrible thing.
It's amazing, especially because they've never played in the same city. So like, I just don't even know how you meet like that. Like it's such a bizarre thing. But yeah, that'll be
fine. Won't be a problem at all.
So besides, now that we've talked about a little bit about Joe Kelly, is there you want to move on to Roki Sasaki, the other?
I think that's kind of the last big thing that we need to talk about, and the fact that he did not take a meeting with the Red Sox. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point. His agent has said there may be a team or two that he hasn't spoken with that he would speak with, but I haven't heard anything about that since before Christmas. And it doesn't seem to be a market issue because he's spoken to both New York teams, heavily linked to the Dodgers, and there's no bigger market than LA. And it's not an East Coast thing because he once again met with the New York teams. And I think that Roki Sasaki not taking a meeting with the Red Sox, to me, says like, hey, the outward perception is you're not as close as you think you are.
I mean, so from what I've heard, only 20 teams submitted.
Can you believe the Oakland A's did not submit anything? Or the Sacramento A's or whatever the hell they are now?
I think they're just the Athletics now.
The Athletics. No city.
From no official.
America's team.
Yeah, so I mean, only 20 teams, I think, submitted proposals to meet with him, which I guess was like the first round of things. It hasn't come out who those 20 teams were. I would assume the Red Sox were one of them, but
I know that they were putting together a pitch based on like Japanese success in Boston, specifically with pitchers like Daisuke and like
Junichi Tozawa.
Yes, of course. But it seems, I mean, the Red Sox invested a ton of money into like Roki Sasaki has been linked to the Red Sox for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah,
like Breslow has gone to Japan personally. Like,
I mean, so the other thing that I have heard is that there hasn't been a lot of reporting as to who exactly Sasaki has met with, past, like essentially the 2 New York teams, LA, and I want to say
Cubs.
I was gonna say the Cubs were like the other one that I think he was like that they definitely know. Is there another one?
I think the Padres. have been confirmed as well.
You're right, Padres.
The last time Breslow was asked about it, though, he flat out said that they have not spoken to him.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like there was sort of an initial burst of like teams that everyone kind of knew he spoke to, and then it's been sort of radio silence ever since. So I think that there's a chance that, it's not that he's just going to talk to those 5 or 6 teams, like that there's more meetings maybe that are taken. So I wouldn't completely write it off as that he's just not going to take a meeting with the Sox, because I think if anything, the Sox making moves in this offseason probably proves that they're at least going to be players for division title or at least a wild card berth. I think that
absolutely.
So I think that it doesn't make a lot of sense to completely not talk to them if they've gone through the trouble of making the proposal and stuff. So I think that will at least happen. Whether or not he comes here, that's a completely different story. And I don't think anyone has a grasp of
the one thing I'm not sure about, though, is the Phillies and the Braves have also confirmed that he has not had an in-person meeting with them either. And maybe that's because he doesn't want to play in Philadelphia or doesn't want to play in Atlanta or whatever. But on paper, those teams are far closer to winning a World Series than the Red Sox are, at least right now. And so maybe the fact that he hasn't met with them and also hasn't met with us kind of makes me feel a little better that it's not like he's like, no, Boston, you're not that close. Like, well, if you're not talking to the Phillies and the Braves, like maybe they're a little closer than we are. So maybe you just have your preferred markets that you would want to play in. I think there was some hope that because of Masataka Yoshida, he would be interested in coming to Boston. But he is apparently pretty good friends and looks up to Yu Darvish, which I think makes the Padres make way too much sense. Him and Seiya Suzuki are pals, which makes the Cubs make too much sense. Yamamoto and Shohei are obviously with the Dodgers. So I don't know if you can put a whole lot of water in that bucket in terms of like if that's going to outside of the Darvish thing, because that's his idol. Like he's gone on record as saying the pitcher that he hopes most to be like is Yu Darvish. So I think that makes the Padres far more likely than probably anyone else right now. But I think people were trying to put way too much stock into just the same thing we did with Soto. We're like, well, David Poppy lives next door to his parents, like, looking for any reason to link him to the Red Sox. And I don't think that Masataka Yoshida is going to be that link. And it wouldn't shock me one bit if we are out of the running of the Sasaki sweepstakes solely because we're better than we were and we should compete for a division title, but we still need pieces, and starting pitching isn't one of the pieces that we need. Whereas he could slot into a Dodgers rotation, which I guess would be 9 deep at that point, or the Padres, who are, perennial. They're going to have to do something to be able to beat the Dodgers early in the postseason next year. And if that's Sasaki, that's great. The Yankees are going to try to retool and spend money after Soto left for the Mets, and the Mets are going to spend whatever they want to spend because why not?
Yeah.
And I think $7.2 million is as much as he can make over the next 4 seasons. Like it's chump change in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, there's like some of the stuff that's come out about his parameters for the meetings, though. Like he doesn't want, when he meets with teams, he doesn't want any players there. So it's like
I thought that was so weird.
Yeah, so I mean, so the fact that some of these teams have players that maybe he's played with or has played in the same leagues as him and stuff like that, like they're not even at least there for the meeting. I'm sure
right,
maybe they can text or whatever, but like it's not there's no major league players there. It's a pretty, from what I understand, it's also like not a lot of the front office. He doesn't want like a million front office people there. It's like pretty bare bones. So I mean, yeah, it's a strange courtship that he's making these teams do, and so because of that, I have no grasp of what is going to actually drive him. I know that there's, like you said, reporting about the whole Yu Darvish thing, but besides that, it doesn't feel like there's really any other bearings that I have, at least.
I kind of hope that he's the first, not really first, because I mean, while the Dodgers have obviously signed like Blake Snell, but I kind of hope that Sasaki doesn't go to LA solely because I think that we need to start seeing free agents who obviously they want to win a title, but let's do it by beating the Dodgers. I think that if it's not this offseason, I think it'll probably happen within the next couple of years, where I think that if you choose to go to the Dodgers as a free agent, like your peers won't have as much respect for you. And I think that you'll start seeing that'll be a pitch that teams make to other players is like, hey, like if you come to Boston, like we are positioning ourselves to be the antithesis of the Dodgers. We can beat anything that LA throws at us because we have this, and this. And if you come here, you complete the puzzle. And we can say that we've beaten, one of the best assembled teams in the history of the sport. And I think you're going to start to see that happening, hopefully this offseason with who's left. But at least over the next couple seasons.
Yeah, there's not that many people left. I think is the issue we're coming, to grips with. But you saying that did remind me of Hye Song Kim,
who just signed with
the Dodgers, which I completely thought, reading it quickly, was Ha Song Kim.
Yep.
No, So Ha-Seong Kim is still out there, and
who makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox if he wasn't hurt.
I don't understand why there's been no connections there.
I honestly wouldn't be opposed to signing him because he's reportedly not going to come back until after the trade deadline. And I mean, you would have some insurance there in case Story would be injured again, or Grissom is injured, and Campbell wouldn't live up to expectations.
And he plays multiple positions. Like, you can stick him at third, you can stick him at short, you can stick him at second. He's pretty utility like that in the infield. And so, yeah, I don't really understand why there hasn't.
He's got some sneaky pop. Like, he hit 17 home runs a couple years ago. Like, was it 2 seasons ago that he was like the person that everybody wanted the Red Sox to trade for?
Yeah,
to replace Bogey.
Yeah, exactly. Because when Bogart signed there, everyone was kind of like, okay, well, you already have Tatis Jr. at shortstop, and you have Ha-Seong Kim, who's been actually really good at shortstop in Tatis's absence. And they were like, how many shortstops do you need? And the answer has been more and more, obviously.
So what you're saying is that we should trade for Tatis Jr.?
Sure, let's make it happen. Do you think Crawford gets that done?
Yeah, 100%. They need pitching.
So, I mean, yeah, that when I saw that come across the line, and I don't understand why we're not tied to him more. Maybe it is because of coming back from injury, but I don't know. I think it's worth taking a flyer on him.
Oh, absolutely, because he'd probably sign a pretty cheap deal.
Yeah, I mean that. I think that he's probably wants to do like a 2-year deal so that he can come back this year, reestablish his value in the next season, and then hopefully sign a bigger contract. So, yeah, I don't know, Craig, if you're listening, get it done.
Yeah, and we know you are.
I vaguely remember reading a rumor last year that the Red Sox were looking to trade Duran for Ha-Seong Kim.
Wow. I mean, that would have been
at the time. That would have been huge.
Yeah, exactly. At the time, that would have been like a pretty good deal. Now, I think people would have been like rioting. I think that Duran has made a lot of fans in Boston, and so I think that he is probably one of the more like untouchable guys.
Was it the winter meetings? It was what, him, Anthony, and Campbell were the only 3 actual untouchables that other teams were told.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks volumes. I mean, Cora looks at him as a clubhouse leader.
Which is insane, like considering, the first like couple of times that he came up, people really were questioning like mentally if he could handle it. Like if
was it 23 where like he had the back and forth with the fan in Kansas City? That was the inside the park home run. Like he looked like a basket case.
Yeah, it looked bad. And I mean, I was in.
And then it came out that he was struggling with like mental health and everything. Like, and so those things started to make sense. Like, okay, well, he was struggling. Of course, like he was struggling on field too.
Yeah, and it's a good story that he was able to overcome that in the way that
minus the suspension.
Yeah,
but
but I mean, the fact that he has is kind of incredible. Like, I just think that in 22 and 23, if someone had said like Duran for Ha-Seong Kim straight up, I would have been like, yeah, let's please.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, he is one of the nicest individuals I've ever spoken to, like in professional baseball. When the Red Sox came to St. Louis last season, my wife and I, during the Saturday night game, sat on the left field wall right past the foul line. And I mean, like, we could reach out and high five him. We were that close. And every time he ran out, like, I'd say something about his at bat or something. And, end of the game, he came over. He was like, "Hey man, thank you. I was wearing a Bayo jersey And he's like, that's awesome. I don't see a lot of those. Like, he was just a super nice guy. And I think that that's not something that gets spoken about a ton either. I remember on the baseball card subreddit earlier this year, somebody got his like 1-of-1 rookie refractor card and messaged him on Instagram. And he like was like, hey, if you can get out to a game, like I've got field passes for you. I'll pay you whatever you want for the card. And they just gave it to him. And like, he was a super cool dude about it. Like, and so I think that more of those stories also need to get out there about Jarren Duran to help kind of solidify him as that leader in Boston, because while there's way more of that stuff that's happened, the only thing that is in the media about him or was in the media about him after it happened was the suspension.
Right.
And I think that he's owned it, and he's, he's apologized, and he's, made the promises that he's made to do better and all that stuff. And that's great. But I think that if more stories about him as a person and those positive fan interactions get out there, I think that he's going to be even more beloved around baseball and around Boston. And like, I thought it was really cool. That was back in May when the Sox were in St. Louis, so well before any of that stuff happened. But I'll tell my kid about it, like, hey, like your mom and I got to talk to Jarren Duran because hopefully he's a 9-time All-Star and all that good stuff. And, it'll mean something. But I think the more of those stories that get out there,
MVP, so
yeah, I think if we can get more of that stuff out there, and I think that as he gets more comfortable with being in the spotlight in Boston, I think we'll start to see that. And that's something that I really hope for him, because I really like Jarren Duran as a player, as a person.
If you've seen any of the Red Sox spring training advertising, they are really making him the face of it, which I was like sort of surprised about, because I think that they really have been trying to get Devers to be more interactive with fans and like out to fan fests and stuff like that. So like the fact that all the advertising that I've seen at least has been very Jarren Duran focused, I've been surprised about. But I think
and I like it. He's young. He could potentially be one of the faces of the franchise this season. And if that's a burden, and I say burden that has a negative connotation, but if that's a burden that he's willing to bear for this club, more power to him, because we need people who are willing to take on that mantle to be like, I am a Boston Red Sox and I'm proud to be a Boston Red Sox. Yeah, and that's not Devers, and I don't think it will ever be Devers. And Devers is an on-field leader to his teammates, and I think that's all he needs to be. I don't know if Rafael Devers needs to be the face of the team, and I think that's okay. Not everybody is David Ortiz. Not everybody is that big personality that people flock to. That's not Devers, and that's fine. But if it is Jarren Duran, if it is Triston Casas,
I was going to say,
cool.
It definitely is Casas. Like,
oh my gosh, those dugout interviews were phenomenal throughout the season.
So good. I'll say one more Chris Cotillo pick here. This is mostly just for Maddie's sake, but Triston Casas causes a stir with comments about a trade rumor and or his place on the team. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, Cotillo's predicting this, but he also is the one who can definitely make this come true just by immediately first thing in training camp, just saying like, hey, so what do you think about those trade rumors? Because Casas is just completely willing to answer any question.
And Cotillo's track record is in that vein. Like, that's not above him.
Yeah, exactly. So I enjoyed that one, and I was like, I gotta make sure Maddie knows.
Do you think he will?
He's such a ham. Of course, he'll take any opportunity to say something funky.
I legitimately wonder if he will do it about the actual like trade rumors and stuff. Like if he'll address them head on or just be like, you never know what people are going to say, and just kind of move past it. Especially after Breslow came out, I was like, we're not actively shopping him. Like, I don't know where that came from, when literally a week beforehand it had leaked that there was a trade on the table to send him to the Mariners.
Yeah, and it's we're not actively shopping him as such, like a like industry term kind of thing.
Like you didn't email every team and tell them, hey, if you want to trade for Triston Casas,
exactly.
he's available.
It's like we are not calling teams to say, do you want this guy? And it's like, okay, I believe you. You're probably not. But if some team is interested, or if you're already talking trades with the team, are you not saying like, are you interested in Casas? Like, I'm sure you are. So, yeah, actively shopping. I just thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
As a phrase.
Like, Triston's a smart guy. Like, he knows what's going on. And I mean, at the end of the day, baseball is business. But I don't know. I think he is a ham. I agree with you 100% there, Maddie. And I think that, like, he does enjoy that spotlight. But I do think that he is enough of a baseball mind to be wary of, well, what if that causes waves that don't need to be caused? Because you would hate to alienate, because Cora seems to love Casas, but comments like that, I think, would make Cora not love Casas.
I think that, go ahead. You know him better than me, so.
Up for debate. He's made comments that have alienated himself before, like with his injury return timeline. So, I mean, unless he got some media training between now and then, it could happen again.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that there's also a chance that, I don't think it's going to be like, asking him about like the trade rumors or something, and him just saying like, oh, I would welcome the challenge, or like I wouldn't mind leaving Boston. Like, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. Like, I think there's a chance that he says something so like offbeat and kind of like out there that it doesn't actually ruffle any feathers, but maybe it makes people be like, what is this dude on?
Yeah.
I think that that's actually like probably more likely than him.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
I do wonder if there's any hope of signing him to an extension now, or if that door is closed from his side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess none of us, despite him being probably the most outspoken member of the team this past season, like, I don't think any of us know really like his personality in that respect,
And I think that's the goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't think what kind of, and he's obviously not in the arbitration process yet where it's gonna, be like the Red Sox saying like, oh, but you struck out this many times or anything.
Right.
Maybe we'll get more insight at that point. But right now, I don't think you have any idea like if he's taking this stuff personally or not. So he doesn't rub me as a guy who takes a lot of things personally, because I mean, a lot of people were upset about the, shirtless yoga before games and stuff like that. And it didn't seem to really bother him that much.
Yeah.
People more started to understand him more than he started to conform to what other people thought. So
I know he made some concessions and was like, I won't do it on this part of the field. I'll go out to left field.
Yeah.
I'll do, so he kind of was willing to work with people that didn't quite understand kind of what he was doing. I know the painted nails thing rubs a certain portion of the fan base the wrong way, but I don't think anybody on the team cares at all. Like, Casas is who he is, and I think that that's one reason why so many people do support him the way they do. It's one reason I support him. Like, I love that he is unapologetically himself, and he's like, I'm good at baseball and I'm kind of weird, and both those things are cool.
Yeah, it's not a
because I'm just one of those things. Like, I'm not good at baseball.
Yeah, it's not a profile that you see very often, and I'm trying to think of like the last time maybe we even saw it on the Red Sox.
I mean, Manny is probably
Manny.
But even then, it was just, you never knew what Manny was going to say, because Manny was the wrong kind of crazy.
Yeah, because Manny really could rub people the wrong way, like in like might get into a fight with Kevin Youkilis in the dugout kind of way. And like, Casas doesn't appear to be that way. More like people might think he's weird than like want to fight him.
Yeah.
at least so far. Who's to say?
I don't know if anybody would be brave enough to challenge the hulking mass that is Triston Casas to a fight.
Yeah,
he's big.
Yeah, when I saw them play in Texas, I remember seeing him standing. I think he was standing next to Cora, and I was like, oh wow, yes.
He was hurt when they came through St. Louis. It was like 3 weeks after he got pulled from that game in Pittsburgh, and I was so upset because I really wanted to see him, but there were some dudes that were like talking about him, like other fans like in the crowd that had seen him earlier in the season, and they were saying they're like, you don't like, he's big on TV, and you see him in person, you're like, holy crap, he's a giant. Like they're like, he looks like a WWE star. Like,
yeah. He's a big man.
Joe Kelly would fight him.
I mean, Joe Kelly would fight anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think Joe Kelly doesn't have a lot of. He doesn't care about his personal safety a lot. I don't think.
No.
All right. Well, I think that just about does our.
I think so.
Cover all of our topics.
Episode 3 in the books. And for those of you who are listening, thank you. We appreciate it. Who are leaving comments on the website. I'm glad that people are listening and interacting, and hopefully we can keep growing this.
Yeah, and we've already mentioned that I had a article recently published about previous Red Sox players that are currently free agents.
Except for Chris Martin.
And, yeah, cross Chris Martin off that list. And so, Maddie, you have anything you want to plug?
Not at the moment.
Okay. And then Alex has...
I've got the first round of roster projections that is set to come out tomorrow on the 7th. So if you're listening to this on the 7th today, hop on over to the website and check that out. And then I don't have a hard time on when the Nolan Arenado piece is coming out, but I would think it would probably be tomorrow or Thursday, the 8th. The Bregman piece got a lot of great engagement. I tend to stay out of the comments most of the time, but I think on the Arenado piece, if there's that level of engagement again, I think I'll probably pop in and chat a little bit with some of our readers, and because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, and our readers, our listeners who have amazing episode title ideas, keep it up in the comments.
Because we're terrible at it.
Yeah, we're not very good at this, but I do enjoy all of your suggestions retrospectively. So
yeah, and I guess we need to start doing the rate and subscribe and like and all that good stuff. Like, definitely, if you enjoy the podcast, share it out. Tell people about it, because we enjoy doing it and we think we've got some good takes, and we think that other people would like to hear about them. So if you are enjoying the podcast, please like, rate, and subscribe. It helps us grow. Oh, Maddie disappeared. It helps us grow, and it allows us to keep churning out more episodes. And once the spring training and the season hit, I imagine we'll be pretty much a weekly show at that point, as opposed to kind of just whenever there's news.
Yeah.
But
and now that it's a new year and there's less holidays coming up, we'll probably also
and New Year's, less holidays and New Year's.
And New Year's, yeah, and New Year's will probably be a little bit more regular. So, yeah,
sweet. Well, it's been fun. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Maddie, if you're listening, since you're no longer on the StreamYard.
Yeah, and we will check you guys next time.
All right, see you guys. Thank you.